I have lost count of how many times people have asked me the same annoying question. Why did you choose to be a teacher, a public school teacher to be exact, after earning your master's degree abroad? Their tone and expressions are always the same. Puzzled, disappointed, or even disgusted. You see, this question itself reflects a deeply rooted issue. How teaching, and by extension, education, is undervalued. It is seen as a second choice profession, a backup plan, rather than a foundation of a thriving society. But what if I told you that this perception is exactly what holds us back from real progress? When we talk about education, the conversation is often limited to which schools we should attend. Public school or private schools? What university should we aspire to? Domestic or abroad? But education is far more than just schools as physical building. It is about what learning truly means and the role of each person in society plays in it. I have seen firsthand of how the lack of proper education affect children, not just in their ability to read and write, but also in their ability to dream, to hope, to believe that they can end the cycle of poverty. Some of my students come from families where education is not a priority, or even a country. But the thing is, their parents do that because, not because of they don't care, but because survival takes precedence. When a family struggles to put food on the table, the value of school diminishes. But again, we're not talking about free lunch here. Because it's not the kids that's starving, it's the whole family. So, yeah. We often hail education as the great equalizer, the key to lock a better future. Yet in Indonesia, the stark divide between the privileged and the disadvantaged is heartbreaking. And that makes it very clear that education has yet to fulfill its promise. Even in Jakarta, the place where we are now, the stark contrast is devastating. We in Indonesia, and to be specific in Jakarta, are deemed as a symbol of progress. But we know that some children can attend world-class schools, speak fluent English, like what we do in this room, but others struggle in a crumbling classroom. They don't even have a proper desk. No fans, no projectors, let alone air conditioning. The floors are cracked. The environment is far from conducive to learning. But the issue of education goes far beyond the infrastructure. It is deeply systemic and structural. Students do not enter the classroom as blank slate. They bring with them the weight of their upbringing, the family circumstances, and the limitations imposed by the society. Many of my students were already half done before they even stepped into school, shaped by environments that did not nurture learning. I I recently shared this on my Instagram feed. One of my students once wrote a wish in a class during an activity where we try to differentiate needs versus wants. I wish I had a window at home. That simple sentence broke my heart. For her, even a basic necessity, it's not wants, it's a basic needs. Like fresh air and sunlight, they've been an attainable dream. So how can a child focus on learning when their most fundamental needs are unmet? I can only imagine what it's like to be outside of Jakarta. So I have seen this disparity up close. My previous schools, where I worked, located in the heart of Jakarta, just minutes away from the presidential palace and city hall, and should have been a place of opportunity, should have been a vehicle of social mobility. But my students come from homes filled with hardship. Many grew up in broken families, abandoned by their parents, where fathers serving time in jail, and mothers remarried. I vividly remember one of my students, a boy, very smart and handsome. He came to me and he shared how his mother's boyfriend often slept in their room. I was speechless. I was out of words. Their so-called homes were overcrowded, dark and barely fit for living. Some students showed up without books, without pens, without even the basic tools to learn. And we know that the government have already provided educational funding like KJP, Kartu Jakarta Pintar. But too often, the money is misused, spent by struggling parents on daily survival rather than their education for children. So beyond the student struggles, the education system itself, I shared this many times, is plagued by misalignment. Teachers, principals, policymakers, stakeholders rarely share the same vision. Instead of prioritizing students' needs, the decisions are often entangled in politics, bureaucracy, and personal interest. A fractured system like this makes real change nearly impossible. How can we improve public schools when those in power fail to see students as the true center of education? Are we still allowed to believe that education is public good? Or is it a commodification now? Commodified needs. So I think this is just not an education crisis. It is a societal failure. It is a reality that should make us stop and ask, how can a nation progress when so many of its children left behind? This is exactly why education needs to be popularized. Not so that it becomes a shared responsibility, not just of teachers and schools, but of society as a whole. Without a collective effort to transform the system, we are merely perpetuating the cycle of inequality and lost potential. So what's the big deal? Because education is not just about personal success. It is a driver of economic growth, social well-being, and even revolution. It is a tool to break generational struggles, a means to an end. But also education is an end in itself. It should shape us into a wiser, kinder, more empathetic individuals. People who think beyond their own interests and strive to contribute to their communities. We need to shift our focus from mere access to quality and equity of education. Education is more than just getting good grades. It is about fostering a just, civic-minded society. It shapes how we interact, with one another, how we solve problems, and how we create a world worth living in. And we should not see education as a privilege, but as a fundamental right for every child, regardless of their background, economic status, or geographical location. Every child, whether born in an affluent family, in the city, or in a rural village with limited resources, deserve the same opportunity to learn, to grow, and to achieve their full potential. Denying them this right is not just an individual loss. It is a collective failure that holds back the progress of an entire nation. That so-called golden generation 2045 will only belong to the elites. Remember, our education system reflects who we are as a society. We cannot ignore the fact that education is tied to parenting, to social structures, to opportunities that extend far beyond the classroom, to how it is practiced rather than taught. So by popularizing education, we will eventually recognize the burdens of our teachers. They are often overworked, underpaid, and unappreciated. How can we expect to build a strong educational system if we do not uplift and support those at its core, to at least do our part to help the work of a teacher? They should be seen as the catalyst for learning, not the only architects of it. It is up to all of us to share the responsibility and lighten their burden, ensuring that the future of education is not left to rest on their shoulders alone. So how do we popularize education? We start by changing the narrative. We need to celebrate teachers, to respect and value their role in shaping our future. We need to make education a priority in policy making. I don't know if this is still relevant. Community efforts and public discourse. So let's make education matter. Let's make it a conversation that everyone takes part in. And most importantly, let's make it something we all take responsibility for. Let's make education something people want to talk about. Let's make learning an aspiration, not an obligation. And let's start by giving our teachers the recognition they deserve. So I guess if someone asks me again, why did you come back just to be a teacher? My answer is simple. Because this is where change begins, no matter how small. It is what leads me here. And I guess if we want a better world, a more just and thriving society, just like what's reflected on the preamble of our Constitution, then education can just be important. It has to be popular. Thank you.